All right. I think we're live.
Are
There we
we
go.
live?
Woo!
Woo! Great, we are live. So, welcome to this week's live behind the hub, where we're looking ahead slightly. So, 2024, which really isn't that far away. So, anyone who hasn't got their Christmas presents, you're cutting it close. But that's obviously not what we're here to talk about today. Today, I've got the
Hold on a
privilege.
second. Time out. All your Christmas present stuff is done? You're like finished
Absolutely.
and ready to go? Of course
In
not.
October, before
Uh, it-
Halloween.
uh, and are you a Christmas fan? Do you like Christmas, the holidays?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Every day, different Christmas film. Gotta get it. Gotta get it ready. Are you?
Amazing. Yes. My neighborhood is like all kinds of balloons and blow up Santas and reindeer and menorahs and festivals and things like that. So here in Arizona, in the United States, people are definitely in the holiday spirit. So very nice to meet you, Bridget, and thanks for doing this. And super excited to talk about AI in sales in 2024.
Absolutely. And I think for everybody who doesn't know you, and they should all know who you are already, but if there is anybody who doesn't, can you give us a brief little rundown about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Dan Tyre. I have been with HubSpot for 17 years, right? And as five-time entrepreneur, right? Five startups over the last 50 or so years. First one went to $1 billion when I was right out of college.
Oh
Started
my
as a salesperson and grew over 9 years to $1.4 billion. My second startup, I was the CEO and founder. Started the company in my dining room and grew it to $30 million, 6 locations across North America. My third startup was a national training company. My fourth startup got bought out by Microsoft. And HubSpot is my fifth startup, and amazing, right? And
and final.
I was employee number 6, the first salesperson. I went from being a president of a software company to essentially cold calling for HubSpot. Don't tell anybody I was cold calling. And it was amazing. And from the very beginning, you could tell that the company was going to be was mission driven, was going to be very different, and really cared and focused on our customers. And over the last 17 years, added multiple products off of inbound marketing, focused on our employees with a HubSpot culture code and with our customers with world class software. And now, I think last time I looked, HubSpot had about 7,000 employees, right? Sold in 122 countries, right? About 50 elite partners, of which BabelQuest is one, right? Our go-to-market motion includes partners very, very closely. And we were just talking last time I was in Oxford was, I think it was 2017 with Olivia Kirwan and speaking in front of your customers. So happy to do it again live over LinkedIn Live.
Maybe we won't wait another 6 years.
You just got to invite me. Yes.
As it so you've got the experience, you've kind of seen it all, I would say, when it comes to sales, and maybe not everything. So there was something new this year, well, last year, which was AI, and it's obviously raised a few questions in the sales landscape, and the dust is settling. There's a bit more clarity now, but where do you see AI going in 2024?
First of all, this is just a part of the evolution, right? Sales has changed quite significantly in the time that I've at HubSpot. I tell everybody that everything that I learned before 2007 went right out of the window, right? Because sales and marketing used to be two very separate and distinct functions, right? And along the way, over the last decade or so, they've merged together. The term is sometimes used schmarketing, right? Sales and marketing combined. I invented that term actually, but in 2007, I did. I was talking to a professor at Harvard Business School, and he's like, "That's pretty good." He says
That's
it's
gonna
like smart. I know. It's just. I was talking with Mike Volpe, who was our first CMO, and he's like, we were just generating these inbound leads, and I'm like, it's not sales, it's not marketing, it's marketing. It's like pushed together. I was just being a little dopey, but it's turned
I
out
love
to
it.
be very prophetic, right? Because of the way people buy, right? And the changes that have been driven in sales over the last 15 years are based on a change in buyer behavior, which is very, very different, right? It's hard for young adults to understand, but before the internet, you had to go talk to a human being, right? And you said, I want to buy this. And the human being would, the salesperson would qualify you. They'd be like, Bridget, do you have the budget for this? Are you going to buy before the end of the year? Is this something that is a priority for you? And it
Yeah.
was horrible for the buyer, right? You've gone through that process before, right?
I don't know if I have,
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Because, right, it was outdated. It was horrible back then. And, right, why would you? Now you just jump on the internet, you find and do all of your research. And what we
Mhm.
see now, and really over the last 10 years, is that people will swarm. They'll get really excited about something. They'll go in and they'll do all the research. Then they'll stop.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll stop for years. It's because they got other priorities. There's a million things going on. It's too easy just to move on to the next thing. And that lends itself to a closer combination of sales and marketing working together, right? So we've been advocates of marketing for a long time, right? Because it just makes so much sense. Because if you're a salesperson and I show up and I'm like, Bridget, in 2017, right, you spent like 45 days all over doing a HubSpot trial, understanding and
Mhm.
learning all about it. I'm curious, what did you take away from that program? And if I know that, now all of a sudden you're like, oh, this guy's pretty engaged. This guy has all of
Yeah.
the information. This
Makes
guy,
things feel important.
exactly. And if I
Yeah.
don't have that, I'm like, Bridget, tell me a little bit about your background. You're like, Dan, I spent like a whole month researching an HubSpot in
Yeah, you should know
2017.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And so it's human nature and it's
Mhm.
very, very important. So that sales and marketing combination adds to the functional change in selling. It used to be that it was buyer beware, right? You had to ask the right questions to ensure that you are buying the right things. Now it's seller beware. I've got to make sure you're the right good fit. I've got to make sure that you're going to get value. And if you buy our software and it doesn't work, right, it's my bad, right? You're going to crucify me out on social media, and we're not going to have good user stories, and that gets out into the reputation, and so of the company, and that's not good for the flywheel.
There's
So
more work for the salespeople now.
exactly. And so the role of the salesperson is fundamentally different. That is, I've got to make sure you're a good fit. I've got to make sure that you are going to utilize the software in the way in which you'll get the most value of it. And what we really look for, right, isn't the new sales. What we really look for is the value that we're creating for the customer. And that is a responsibility for the salespeople to tell that story to make sure that everybody is on board. Now we get to 2023, really, and lots of changes.
Yes.
One of the changes that we speak about a lot is the business uncertainty. Right after 10 years of relatively low interest rates globally, right, there are some
Mhm.
fundamental changes now where most sales processes are a little longer. People are scrutinizing their purchases a little bit more, and the ROI and time to value is a little bit more at the forefront, right? And
Mhm.
so that has caused like a few changes over the last 12 months, and now with the emergence of chatspot.ai, right? Now it's easier for people to instill artificial intelligence into their normal sales cycle. And
Mhm.
it's really designed to simplify and optimize the sales process. They're really a great thing, right? For top level salespeople, use of artificial intelligence can become part of their motion that will automate the low content stuff, the stuff that we didn't do particularly well anyway. Right. And allows us to spend a little bit more time targeting the right customer, understanding the best way to add value, and making sure that the customers get the most use out of the software.
So do you think moving forward it's going to be it's hand in hand? Everybody's going to be every salesperson needs to be using it. It's
All
going to make
top salespeople will use it, right? We
Mhm.
sometimes refer to people who are hesitant to embrace technology as legacy salespeople, right? And there's very real reasons why people don't embrace software, right? If what you have done, the relationships and the way in which you've managed your accounts previously is working, right? Then why change it, right? And salespeople they're a little weird. I don't know. Have you noticed that, Bridget? Right?
I no comment on that one.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so you're tacitly agreeing with me, right? They're flat out weird. The reason they're
Yeah.
weird is they got a target on their back, right? Every month or every quarter, they've got to prove that they're bringing in X amount with their quota, right?
Yeah.
And having spent my first 14 years at HubSpot in the sales organization, right? It was just natural. That's the whole like subculture of selling as a part of being a human being. Daniel Pink has a great book called To Sell is Human, and it talks about the sales process and how kind of weird it is to be on a monthly or quarterly quota. It was just natural. That's just part of like the process, right?
Yeah.
And that forces some really unusual behavior. That
Yes.
indicate like because you got to make sure that you're short term focused. You got to make sure you're doing all the right activities. So if it's working, salespeople are hesitant to change, right? It's exactly opposite in marketing. I spent the last 3 years in HubSpot marketing.
As
Marketers
a
will try
marketer,
anything,
love it. A new tool, yes, please. Why
and
not?
you've got plenty of time and effort to
Yeah.
focus because the timeline and horizons are different. In marketing, I work for HubSpot Academy now, and they're 6 month sprints, 6 month increments, right? So we have the luxury of going back and understanding. Let's test this. Let's try this. Let's see how this works,
Yeah.
right? Is so getting salespeople to change is very, very important. That cultural aspect of no, this is where it's going. But I think like most salespeople understand and will quickly understand, right? The rate of change is one of the great things about artificial intelligence is that
Mhm.
things are moving very, very quickly. And you'll see a huge dichotomy of the people who are using uh, AI in their sales process for virtually all of the uh, like low content things that we didn't do particularly well previously, but now is going to greatly accelerate our efficiency and allow us to spend more time with our prospects and customers. And that is a huge thing. And even if you're an experienced salesperson and hesitant to move into the world of AI, we'll tell you today some of the ways that you can do it, like researching customers and identifying customers. And it just to the point where it's so easy that it's really, really hard to ignore. And when I meet with somebody who's like, no, I got it on index cards, I'm like, all right, let me show you how I do it. Right. And I go into chatspot.ai, the HubSpot version of chatspot to generative AI, and I show them how I can find all of the companies in Oxford that are at least manufacturing companies, at least $5 billion, and with one click, automatically in my CRM. And they're like, "Oh my goodness!"
They're
Right? I'm
convinced.
like, how do you do that? He's like, "I got to write all that down on an index card." I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't." And boom, it's right in there. Like, where does it go? I go to the HubSpot CRM. And it's like, "How much does that cost?" I'm like, "It's free." Right? And then he's like, "Wow!" And it's a great use case for salespeople of all different types, B2B, B2C. If you're running on spreadsheets, right, it doesn't work anymore,
No,
right? And
absolutely. It hasn't worked for a very long time. So if I see a spreadsheet off of anybody, I'll be very disappointed in them. But I
because
think,
I
go
know,
on.
but because you're a modern marketer, you understand that, right?
Yeah.
There are still 30% of people who are running on spreadsheets, right? And it's not that they don't believe you. They do believe you. They just don't want to spend the time and effort to be able to move over to the modern world. And that's going to impact them significantly because everybody needs this level of a help, right,
Mhm.
to navigate the next 5 years. Now, I mean, if you're not going to be in business in 5 years, right, then that's a little bit different story. But it's worthwhile because it's so easy, so user friendly, and so impactful.
And then, so I think if I was somebody who was reluctant, I feel like I'm convinced already about that. But thinking about the other side of things, where should people be cautious when it comes to AI in sales?
Anything that's a little creepy or doesn't lend itself towards being a human being. The whole idea is to get us to have more of these conversations, right? And just like you were talking about in the briefing meeting, right? We prefer to be live, right?
Yes,
We prefer to be in the same room. Why? Why do you not want to be in a room with other human beings?
you just connect more, don't you?
Yeah,
When you
that's
know
it.
they're real.
Yeah, and it's a human thing. It's human nature, right? That connection and that community is critically important. HubSpot has always done that very, very well. Understand how to bring everybody together.
Yeah,
Understand that the best way to address issues to change minds, right, to drive missions, is to see a volume of people all together working on a particular issue, right? And so that's what I was saying. When I'm working with somebody who's hesitant, I'll go over to their office, right, where they're comfortable, and I'll bring my PC, I'll sit it there, and I'm like, all right, let's define the prospecting process,
Mm-hmm.
right? And let me show you how I do it, and then you show me how you do it, and we'll just like see which is more obviously efficient in your particular world, right? So the idea of anything that's forced or unauthentic, right, or
Mm-hmm.
doesn't lead to that connection, right, is not something that you might want to do. There are people who will take new technology and use it for nefarious purposes, right? They'll use it for
Oh, yeah.
spam or stupid. And right, all of the studies, all of the data point to the fact that that's not a particularly effective or lucrative way to leverage artificial. They'll still do it. There's always people who don't quite understand the difference between helping somebody. The idea of the inbound philosophy, which in 2018 I wrote a book called The Inbound Organization. It talked about the foundations of HubSpot and inbound. And the first one was treat people like human beings. And if you're
Yeah.
spamming people and or treating them very generic, then you're not treating them like human beings. You've got to honor them because everybody's a little bit different. You got to listen to them and you got to
Mm.
understand where they're coming from. Number two, you have to help before you sell, right? And this is a hard one for a lot of salespeople to understand. They're like, how can I
Mhm.
help? And I'm like, exactly. Find 15 ways. HubSpot Academy is amazing, right? Because if you're not familiar with HubSpot Academy and you're listening to this podcast, right, just Google HubSpot Academy. There's 400 courses and classes and lessons and certifications and boot camps, all designed to teach you the digital realm, right? Sales, marketing, entrepreneurship, development, CRM, customization, all this great stuff. And we give it away for free, right? And we've had it for 12 years, and it is an amazing resource, right, that people love. And lots of people find HubSpot the first time via HubSpot Academy, right? They
Mhm.
take a class, they get a certification, they learn and get a certificate, right? And HubSpot is the benefit of that because when they're deciding on software to help them scale, right, customer software, customer platform, then they'll consider us based on the fact that they know who we are, that we helped them originally, and that we helped to start the relationship. And then you've got to look at the data, right? Which is
Yeah.
another thing. A couple of different areas AI can help. One is data enrichment,
Yes.
right? Data enrichment is one of the top areas that AI can help, right? Automate sales, operations, and enablement, right? And I didn't think about that until I was doing my research for this podcast. There's a great blog article on the HubSpot sales blog.
Mm.
Bridget, do you know the HubSpot sales blog?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've written a handful of articles, and it's an amazing resource. If you haven't, don't subscribe to it, you should. Right? They have a classic article called "AI in Sales," which essentially wrote all my talking points here this morning. Right? And I learned stuff. I love doing research for a presentation because I'm like, oh, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Use
Yeah.
it.
It's a different perspective as well sometimes.
Exactly. And it's very well written, very professional. And they're like, you can automate sales operations and enablement. And I'm like, oh, that's one I didn't think about. Because I'm usually in the funnel, I'm thinking about from a customer facing perspective. They're
Mhm.
saying, no, internally, you can study what tickets are going from where, understand which part of the sales process people are having difficulty with, escalating a deal desk, making sure that you are turning around the approvals that need to be taking place so somebody can give either a discount or a different time frame or something like that. I'm like, that's awesome, right? And that can all be automated. And then pipeline management and forecast. And if
Oh yeah,
we're
a big one. Forecasting
if,
is a big one.
why is it so big?
I think it's so big because people struggle with it so much,
Yes,
and it's
yes,
but it can be simple. It can be, and
yes.
I know that HubSpot have released a new AI forecasting beta, haven't they? But it's only ungated for people who are achieving 70% plus accuracy.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
and you could talk to BabelQuest if you have questions about that. But pipelines are emotional, right, for the salespeople, for the sales manager, and for the company, right? And the reason they're hard is that there's a lot of fuzziness
Mhm.
around what stage something should be. And very realistically, some deals move forward, some deals move back.
Yeah.
That's just the uncertainty of the modern business world, right? But it's very difficult for salespeople to accept that, and for sales managers to understand. No one wants to put in a forecast, right? That doesn't isn't accurate and doesn't
Yes.
come through for what they say that they're going to do, right? No one wants to do that. So they're hesitant. And so there's this built in sandbagging. Do you know the term sandbagging?
No, I haven't heard
Okay.
that.
All right. If you were a salesperson,
Tell me
you'd
now.
know you were, let's say you were going to do 10,000 of MRR this month.
Yeah.
You tell your manager, I'm going to do 9,000 of MRR, right? Because if
Oh,
you do 9,000, right, if you forecast lower, you're still a star. If you forecast higher, you don't hit it, doesn't matter. You're a slug, right?
yeah.
And so
Data.
that exactly. So
Yeah.
that dynamic will continue, right? But if you put your pipeline through artificial intelligence that are looking for, let's say, certain keywords, certain steps in the process,
Mhm.
certain information, right? Then you can have the human forecast. Then you can have an artificially intelligent enhanced pipeline or forecast, right? And then over time, you can compare the two. You can find out who is a excellent forecaster and who isn't, right? You can rely more on the data, which is a
Mhm.
foundation of inbound organization. And you'll have a more accurate assessment of where you're headed, right? Which is better for everyone, right? And that is a hugely exciting opportunity for all the sales teams as they incorporate AI into their daily routine. Now, the other thing is there was one other one, and that was automate conversational intelligence, right?
Mm.
And this is a good one, which we've done for a while with Gong and Chorus and a variety of different recording opportunities. You can see how often you're using a certain phrase. You can see how often you're talking. You can see the percentage of where the prospect is talking and you're talking, and that becomes very, very helpful for a coaching perspective to
Yes.
understand if you're doing all the right stuff. For me, I use chatspot.ai, the HubSpot version of artificial intelligence. It's right in my portal, right? dantyre.com runs on HubSpot.
Mm.
And I just go into my portal and I pull it down. I go over to the chatspot.ai. I go to the prospecting area and I ask it for information on companies before I engage, right? And I have
Mhm.
immediate access to deep understanding of both the people as well as the profile of the company. And then with one click of the button, right, I can just bring it over to HubSpot. So it's right in the CRM, right in the application, which saves a ton of time. And in the
Yeah.
early days, right, when HubSpot was using Salesforce back in 2007, right, that would take, I don't know, probably take 15 minutes. You add that up,
Oof.
just three.
And how many
Uh,
clicks as well?
yeah,
Million
amazing.
clicks to get through.
Yeah, it's scary, right? Because today the speed, and I think a lot has to do with that velocity. When people are excited about something, they want to move, right? Sometimes they'll ghost you. Sometimes they won't like respond. They'll get very excited and then stop. But many times, if you're responding quickly, first of all, prospects appreciate that timeliness, and second of all, you've got a higher propensity to win the deal.
So since you've started using it to get that research about that company beforehand, how much more success do you think you've had? Is it
Ooh, that's a good question. Because I'm not actually on a quota and I serve as an executive sponsor,
Mhm.
right? From a personal perspective, I'm much more prepared,
Yeah,
right?
good.
And it's amazing. I'd be like, oh, PableQuest, I see that you added 3 employees in the last 30 days, according to LinkedIn. And I see that you just announced the podcast about
Mhm.
Behind the Hub. And so when I was doing my research, and I'm very obvious about saying I've done, and people really like, you could see it if it's a live or recorded program, how it changes people's like whole physiology. Their shoulder, they
Yeah,
relax
makes
and
them
they
feel
smile.
special. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. They're like, okay, this guy did his homework. He knows a little bit, and gives me the opportunity to be a little bit more efficient by asking the right questions. After I indicate that I've done that research, I'm like, So I'm interested to understand how you're looking to apply this in 2024. And that gives us a huge opportunity to really dig into the meat of the issue.
Hmm.
Brian Halligan, the CEO of HubSpot, I guess he's CEO Emeritus. Yamini Rangan is the amazing CEO of HubSpot. Has always said it's not necessarily what you sell; it's how you sell it, right?
Mm.
And as you approach artificial intelligence use and development as well, you're going to see more consistency of the kind of software products that people use. Right now, HubSpot's value has always been the crafted, not cobbled, one source of truth, and because we don't do a lot of acquisitions. Although HubSpot just announced an intent to acquire Clearbit, which
Clear bit.
is
Yep.
super exciting, which is data enrichment, which is artificial intelligence assisted way of getting what I just described at
Yes.
scale, right? For all of the prospects and customers in your HubSpot CRM, which is amazing and super
Big.
exciting.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
going to be big for 2024, isn't it?
Amazing. And one of the things that I'm super excited about because it will remove a step. Right now, I have to go in and I do it. Right now, it'll just automatically be two things that I'm looking for. Number one, using AI to dedupe, right? Which
Mm.
is in some level of beta or available to certain customer levels where duplicates, right? As a marketer, you know, duplicates is the
Oh,
bane of your existence.
yes.
It's
Yeah,
horrible.
it impacts your job. You don't know where's the up-to-date information. You don't know which email address to send the marketing email to. Are they going to get it twice? Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that impacts both sales and marketing, I think.
Exactly. That was going to be my point. And you think
Yeah.
it's bad for you. How about if I cycle in and ALI Corporation is under my name, but ALI, like a space in between, is under somebody else's name? I'm like, okay, it's obviously the same company. They're both in Paradise Valley, Arizona. Should I go ahead and work it? And it's fraught with all kinds of unprofessionalism and challenges and inefficiencies, right?
It
And
makes
so yeah. And so just that. If artificial intelligence could take out the dedupes, it's a perfect example of ensuring that people are focused on the right things and ready to be productive so
Mhm.
that they can be more efficient. That should result in a much more efficient process, less low content work, and a better experience for prospects and customers.
Yeah, which is super important. That's what people want nowadays, isn't it? Genuine and relatable relationships. And I think, like you mentioned, AI is going to be great at bringing in those deals. But once they're kind of in that space, what we've kind of noticed as a business ourselves is that sales cycles are getting longer, right? Because
Yes.
the decision makers, like you mentioned it already, is that pre-sale value, right?
Yes.
So how can we manage that? Like in HubSpot, is there any way we can shorten those sales cycles? Where do you kind of see that in 2024?
Yeah, shorten the sales cycles is interesting because if I call you and say, Bridget, I work with podcast managers in the UK who are looking to triple their audience base, does that sound like you? What would you
Mhm.
think?
I'd be like, well, I can't really make I can't make decisions. So,
Oh, well, I was
well,
assuming that you could, but you'd be like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And so the
mhm.
ability for us to use artificial intelligence to hone in on exactly what you need, right, is hugely impactful, right? Because if somebody called me and said, no, I work with program managers who can double the attendees and graduates of your boot camps, does that sound like you? I'm like, oh, yeah, that sounds like me. I want to know more. And today, we use some generic positioning statements where we're kind of guessing what your biggest pain is.
Yes.
And in 2024, I'll know exactly what your biggest pain is. Right. That was a great
Mhm.
example, actually, of like maybe your biggest pain is not people to sign up for the podcast, but for people who are move to become a customer after the podcast. So maybe your biggest pain is the ability to translate your listeners into active prospect, right?
Yeah.
And artificial intelligence is going to be able to identify that based on the patterns that they see and make that recommendation. So when I cycle in, I don't fall into a pothole like I just did. And that will be very impactful for you and the process.
Exactly. So that's going to be an example of me getting value in 2024. So then I can see how that would impact the sales cycles, because you're going straight to that decision maker with their pain point, giving them the resources they need to make that decision. It's just going to equal closed deals, surely.
Yes. What you want is there's a list of things that are priorities for you, and then there's another list of things that you're never going to get to, right? The real business pain is the thing that Eric like cycles in and yells at you about. It's like, we need to do this, we need to, and you know you need to do it, and you think about it all the time. You're like, yeah, I got to do it, I got to do it. And if I know what that is, and I can ping you at the right time, right, and I can show you a way that you could solve it, it's worth every cent, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a lingering issue that if it was easy, you would have solved it previously.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know what that is, and my timing is right, and my positioning is right, right, then that will greatly reduce the process. And all of that is available. Number one, I need to know you exist. Number two, I need to know what cohort you belong to and try to determine if you're similar that to 300 of our other customers. Number
Mm-hmm.
four, I need to be able to identify that. There needs to be a way in which they say, okay, this is the role and the person who typically at a company this size is struggling with this kind of thing. And then a recommendation. These are the ways that you communicate to Bridget of the possible issues that she has, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my ability to engage at that right time with that right value proposition and with a potential answer, right, will greatly you'll be like, where did you come from? You'll be like, oh my goodness, I've
My
been thinking
dreams
about
come
this all
true.
day, right? It's almost a little creepy. You're like, are you in, like looking behind
That's
my?
no,
Anyway, amazing.
that's a really good point. I think what some people are afraid of is towing that line between being a stalker and knowing too much and knowing just the right amount to win them over. And I think that's a really good way of saying AI can give you all of that information. It's
Yeah,
up to you how
yeah.
then you use it, right?
Yeah, exactly. For me, I'm very transparent. I'll say, no, Bridget, I did my homework and this is what I know.
Yeah.
And if I got anything wrong, and the reason I do that is I want to honor the person that I'm talking to tell them that I didn't just show up and ramble, right?
Hmm.
Everybody is a little bit different. In reality, many people are very similar, but there are key differences in human dynamics, organizational structures, processes, and a way that people go to market and way they run their culture which need to be identified and highlighted. And right, we don't really do a good job of that yet because too much data, and as human beings, we're limited in the evaluation of how that works. So the ability for us to get assistance of people who go through large data sets and look at all of that information and then come up with a single one thing that really important to you, and then give me a customized phrase of the vocabulary of how that's referred to in Oxford in the
Hmm.
UK and what I should say so that I elicit that response of like, yes, that's interesting to me, will be a huge benefit for salespeople using artificial intelligence in 2024.
That reminds me, one of the integrations that we use, and Eric absolutely loves, is called Crystal. Have you used it? And
Crystal, no.
it tells you what personality type you're talking to. So I know, for example, when I was emailing you, that I need to be like quite direct. Don't have a really long email. Like just tell him what he needs to
Yeah.
know and send it. And it's amazing. And even as a marketer, I think you can use it in marketing and sales. It crosses over, doesn't it?
Amazing. A disc profile, which is artificial intelligence that explains a little bit about the best way to get a point across to other folks. And we've been recommending that for, I don't know, seems like a decade, right? And very, very helpful because some people, if you go very direct, feel like you're being a little rude,
Yes,
right?
abrasive maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and my wife, for instance, she's very relationship oriented and she wants the whole story. She wants to hear everything about the individual, right? She's always asking waiters and waitresses, what would you order? And I'm like, I don't care what they would order. And has actually no impact. But for her, that's an important indication of
Absolutely.
like building trust in what they're recommending. And that's just a different communication style that if I know that going in, right, I have to be a chameleon. I have to be one of those people who is going to modify my behavior, my
Hmm.
voice tone, go very low in my voice tone, right? None of the big energy, right? If you're not the right person, you're the right person. But if you weren't the right person, right, I'd scare you, and you would never buy from me. You're like, who is this crazy person? He's like pushy. He's yelling at me all the time, and it's because of my inability to recognize the patterns and quickly
Mhm.
morph that into a positive process.
So we've kind of covered what to do when those leads come in,
Yep.
sales cycle, how to close, etc. But what
Yep.
about actually getting those leads? So you've mentioned it before about having the HubSpot Academy. I think is a really good example of demand generation. Like you're giving away free resources, etc. And HubSpot is known for being inbound. But more and more businesses are pivoting towards demand and social generation. So, what are your bets for 2024 on where leads are going to be coming from?
Yeah, it's really about the flywheel. And
Mhm.
for listeners, the HubSpot flywheel is putting your customers at the center of your marketing and sales, right? And you should have tons of user stories. You should have lots of reference customers that we use early in the process, right? And when people are not quite sure if they're going to include HubSpot in their short list or if they're going to go through an evaluation, right? We'll frequently find somebody in the same industry or send them to the industry page that has case studies and use cases on all of these great things, right? Of similar companies in similar countries and similar sizes, right? That are have recently gone through the same thing, and those people are available to talk with them, and they can explain in a very different way the value of moving through a HubSpot sales experience and onboarding experience and that user experience, right? And it really changes the game, right? That connection and community that you talked about at live events, very, very important, right?
Yes.
And it better explained by somebody who doesn't have a vested interest, right? As a salesperson, you're always going to be viewed as all they want to do is sell to me. It's a
Bias.
part,
Yeah.
yeah, that bias. As a customer, right? They don't have that bias, and many times they'll say, HubSpot's not that good at this. They but where they're really great is over here, right? And
Mhm.
that goes a long way towards giving you a realistic and truthful way of looking at the process and what you can the way to maximize that process. So that flywheel concept I think is very, very important, and it should be at the forefront of the way in which you're going out and getting new customers.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people forget that, don't they? So all they're focused on is getting those people through the door, closing it, and then that's it. Whereas actually you need to continue to delight those people because it's all going to come back around again, which is exactly what that flywheel is that you mentioned.
And if you do that, right, we tell everybody the riches are in the niches, right? You really want to go in and find a very specific vertical market where you own, right? And
Mhm.
everybody says, oh, no, no, no. If you're a tech company in Oxford, you should work with BabelQuest. This is why, right? They're really good. They're local. They understand tech companies. And it's actually easier to scale in 2023 moving into 2024 if you have a very specific niche as opposed to being a generalist, right? And a lot of companies have scaled being generalist, right? And it's possible, and it is something that, right, but it's not attuned to the way in which people are buying in 2024. If I am working with, I want somebody who understands my like my pains. I want somebody who
Yeah.
understands my vocabulary, my seasonality, who understands, so I don't have to explain it from point zero. And if they're working with a competitor, I don't care, right? What I
Mhm.
care about is I get time to value more quickly, right?
Yes.
And that will be greatly accelerated artificial intelligence in 2024.
I think that kind of relates back to what you've mentioned already is that like velocity and that speed. And that's what, even though those sales cycles are longer, people want, when they want the value, they want it straight away, which is what I kind
Exactly.
of guess what, like case studies and things like that. There's always going to be a need for them because you want to know that your company that you're investing in, whether it, it's PaperQuest, for example, has worked with education or has worked with manufacturing. You want to know what they've done and you want to know the numbers, the facts. Even if you're not necessarily that way inclined, you don't normally like the detail, you still want to know what you're going to get out of it.
Even more important, you want to understand how the company is to work with. You want to understand what
Mm,
the process was. You've just gone through it. So you talking to another person who just signed up 6 months ago, and you're
yeah.
like, "What was the sales process? How long did it take? What did they do right? What would you have done differently? What,
Mm.
like all of that kind of stuff? I don't know. Right? I'm a salesperson. All I know is my product and my value proposition. I don't know what it takes to buy except from my side. So when you're
Yes.
talking to somebody who's just been through it, it's very, very first of all, therapeutic. Second of all, empowering,
Yes.
because then you can come back and you say, all right, but how about this? How do we deal with the integration? How do we pick a partner? Where do we go to get all that information? And it becomes a lot easier for you to run an efficient purchasing process,
Mhm.
which is exactly what you want to do, right? We want to sell efficiently and accelerate the sales process, right? But what we really want is to make sure that we're selling the right product to the right person at the right time.
Yes. And I think that's something I think HubSpot came out with right at the start is the selling to the right people at the right time, etc. And that hasn't changed. A lot has changed since then, but that hasn't changed. And I think um, thinking back to kind of everything that you've said, we've got kind of 5 more minutes now. But what I kind of want to hear from you in the last 5 minutes is what is what are the things that sales teams need to stop doing in 2024, and what are the things they need to start doing in 2024? Like a quick rundown in the last 5 minutes.
All right. Things that customers or buyers are looking for genuine, like relatable relationships, right?
Mm,
And you want to make sure that you're treating them as a human being, right?
yeah.
We see it all the time, and I think there's a much better understanding that, people have family issues, and that you just want to make it easy to buy, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I do is make sure that we have make sure we have mutual action plans, right? And are
Mm,
you familiar
okay.
with that term,
No.
MAP? Okay,
No. Go
so
on. Mutual action plan.
once somebody expresses an interest in an enterprise account and says, all right, we think that we want to investigate this, we're like,
Mm,
great, let's define in a piece of paper all of the things that you have to do, what
mhm,
you need to do for your internal evaluation, what we need to do to make sure that there's a smooth onboarding process so that everybody has a successful outcome. And we'll create it, we'll send it to you, you add anything that's different in your process, and then we'll assign people and dates, right? As a salesperson, it's very, very helpful because now you have a little project map that you understand who the people you have to talk to get everything done. As a customer,
mhm,
it's very effective because you know how long it will take, who is responsible at the HubSpot side. You get introduced to the people who are going to work with you on a earlier in the process, and make sure that the purchase process and the onboarding process is seamless. And you alluded to that earlier in the conversation, which is a huge point, right? It doesn't stop once you make the sale. It should start with a combination of everybody involved early in the process, all working together in a seamless process.
yeah. Okay. We That does sound like something that we call it upfront contract. I think we
Yeah.
say an
Yeah.
upfront contract where people. You mentioned it already. People like it when you're honest and like transparent and tell them what they can expect. Setting those expectations
Yes.
super early is
Right.
going to mean there's no disappointment. Well, there shouldn't be unless you
Right.
mess up. But
Upfront contract is a Sandler education
it
term,
is.
right? And you're saying, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it, right? And if somebody will spend time working that through, there's a much higher propensity that they're going to purchase from you. And they do absolutely appreciate it. And it's very transparent. And it's the right way to deploy enterprise software for a seamless handoff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've covered all the questions that I had to ask you. But is there
Awesome.
anything? Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to
No,
say?
No,
No.
Babel Quest is a great partner for HubSpot, and thank you so much for bringing the what's now referred to as all-bound process, right? Because now
Oh,
people are
yeah.
going back to outbound sales process, and if it's done right, it's just the same as inbound sales process,
Mhm.
right? Especially if you're identifying good fit customers, right? The inbound revolution will go on for another 30 years, right? It's
Yes.
amazing and exciting, and we're at the early stages. The AI implementation is important, right?
Mhm.
And it's super easy. Chatspot.ai is free to all HubSpot partners and providers and customers and prospects, right? You just have to download the free CRM and it's right in there. And I use it 4 times an hour, right? And once it's in your process, right, you'll never give it up, and you'll see the value of it. And if you have any questions, you can just ping me, Dan Tyre at HubSpot, or dtyre at HubSpot.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming. And I will check in a year's time and we can go over everything that we've just said and see
Awesome.
what hasn't
Look
come
at that. Good follow up. You're doing your own upfront
true.
contract there, Bridget. Very, very nicely done.
I'll be in touch in 365 days and we can talk about 2025.
Sounds good. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for inviting me. This is super fun. Thanks for great preparation. You and Mia did a great job. And give my best to Erica and the rest of the executive team.
I will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.